Om Brahmanandam Shivam Shantam Preman Rupam Naranjanam Yogisham Adbhutam Nityam Akadadvaita Lakshanam Vijnanam Trigunatitam Turyabeda Samgitam Subodham Sharadam Chaiva Vivikashashi Bhushanam Samanmaya Mahacharya Yugadharma Swarupinam Sarvadeva Swarupam Sri Ramakrishna Namamyam Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Welcome this weekend to our double event of Satsang and Brahman Bites, or God Blogs, we're calling them. And an hour each session. I was writing to a few people, new people who are looking in and telling them about this weekend, these weekends. No class tomorrow because we'll be literally or practically on our way towards the mainland and our retreat at Windward Waters on the Annapurna Upanishad. And I've been giving that later sections of that Upanishad a good deep samyama, as they call it in yoga, a good deep concentration so that I can present those teachings, mainly on jivanmukti and some on videhamukti, the living liberated soul, and the disembodied liberation called videha, free of bodies. Those are all great teachings, special facets that come from India. You only really hear such wonderful teachings on formlessness and higher consciousness so well described and set out for people who are interested in the darshanas of India, and yoga and Vedanta and Buddhism and others. And they're very powerful teachings and subtle. Anaranian is the word. They're subtlemost of the subtle. So on this day, we meet for satsang first. And I hope you've come with some participatory questions, and can join in. And we can consider these facets of reality and also the non-reality, or the anatman, or maya, or prakriti, nature, or agyanam, ignorance, the things that stand in the way and block our pursuit and attainment of freedom. This is a watchword for Vedanta, always is freedom. That was Swami Vivekananda's favorite American word when he was here. So much so that he passed away on 4th of July to sort of put an accent on that for us, that we needed a kind of freedom that was transcendental, of a type that was free from bondage to conventions, even conventional religions and society and its ways, the ancestors and the relatives that are desiring rebirth in form, to point out that there's a different way towards formless reality. And that Annapurna Upanishad, which we'll study in a few weekends here in Washington State, accents those beautiful teachings on jivanmukti. You've come here to become a living liberated soul. My teachers should say that that's the main reason why you've come. All other purposes fall behind that and get realized when that is realized. So as the Upanishad has been telling us lately, and one of the themes that has come out of it just recently is, don't allow yourself to become finitized. And I was looking at my teacher's oft uttered statements in his discourses, and he was saying, you are infinite, not finite. You are immortal, not mortal. And so he would repeat that truth of Vedanta about being an infinite being, and that would follow in the trail of that statement. Do not let yourself become finitized. Don't give in to small thinking, if you want to put it in an easier way to understand that. Keep your mind expanded in its capacity to know Brahman, as the peace chants of the Upanishads tell us. And that's a daily resolve that the devotee, the aspirant, the seeker, the sadhika undertakes. And it's a vow, vrata. Vows are very important. They've been rather forgotten nowadays, but those beings who take vows around higher reality and vow to realize their consciousness, which is the underlying substratum of everything, those beings make the swiftest and most sure and certain headway in this lifetime. And then we look to them in other lifetimes when they come back and exemplify those great teachings and that state of awareness, pure conscious awareness, which is timeless and deathless, partless, actionless, and divine. So then join in and offer some questions or some Atma Vichara. Have you said your Saham today? Saham, Naham, as the method that's been practiced by the great souls like Ramana Maharshi. First, you state, I am not that, I do not accept that. And then you state, well, who am I then, or what am I? And then you follow it up with the confirmation of I am Brahman. There's a 3-step process called Atma Vichara. I am that. So Naham, Saham, Kaham, they're beautiful teachings in Advaita Vedanta, which keep us on the straight and narrow, along the tried and true, until we reach that status of Brahman and join the knowers of Brahman and the lovers of God. And that's becoming a jivanmukti, and that's what you've come here for. That's why you're in the body and in this questionable place called Burloka, or the earth plane, where matter is king. So we have to dethrone matter and put absolute consciousness back on the throne. And we do that by appealing to the Divine Mother of the universe to open up the nadis, cause the spiritual energy to flow through us, and keep it flowing. Inwards and upwards, a kind of inward ascension towards the formless and all the beautiful kingdoms of heaven within that you will encounter on the way there, which all dwell inside your very self, in the great mind, the Mahat. So we take various of these postures and positions up for deep contemplation. And that adds more of the same, opens up these deeper nadis, and memories come of divine experiences we've had over a series of lifetimes, in a series of ages, most likely. So then, who has something to contribute this morning for satsang?
Namaste, Babaji. Namaste. Well, again, your introduction was an answer, partly. My question would be about mind-only schools. So how shall we understand mind? And I'm sorry to ask it again. And of course, so it's let's say, never enough to clarify. When we talk about mind-only schools, how can we understand, differentiate, and find the unity with manas, buddhi, and chitta? And when we talk about chit, shuddhi, I don't know whether I pronounced it well. What mode of practice is that? And what are the preliminary prerequisites which are recommended to be fulfilled.
Yes, well, that's a large statement that requires a lot of time to answer, but generally speaking, the chit shuddhi is that purity of mind, which is so coveted by great souls. They start out with that when they take up an antakarna, or they continue their antakarna in a body. And so they would start out knowing, of course, the mind will fashion the bodies, and the mind has already fashioned the worlds in which the body will express itself or manifest itself. All of this is done in a kind of precognitive way in their case. That's like a dream. Like you might want to go to sleep and just plan what kind of dream you're going to have it, wake up. So sort of like that, they're doing that with all of life, or all the lifetimes that they prefer to do consciously. So they'll take those lifetimes up and project bodies and then work themselves into those. That used to be sort of a well-known fact, became lost over time, and then it got taken up again in Tibetan Buddhism in 700 AD, and they started concentrating on Bardo's states of existence and phases of time in which beings went in and out of the body, and how a soul, as Krishna was telling back in the time of the Gita, goes through different incarnations to perfect itself, to become that jivanmukti that I was just talking about, that living liberated soul. Could be born in the house of pure and prosperous beings first, so that it gets a good chance. And money was all provided for it. If money is provided for it and it uses it for enjoyment, then that's, of course, a wasted lifetime as far as spirituality is concerned. But if money is provided for it and it uses that because it has time to practice spiritual disciplines, then, of course, that's the best use, one of the best uses for wealth. So those beings will sometimes plan themselves to be born in pure and pious households, or better than that, Krishna says, households of yogis. And that's going to be difficult, he says, because quite often yogis are not, and yoginis are not getting married. They're living more like almost a monastic lifestyle without taking vows. They're living those yogic lifestyles. But eventually, by taking a series of births, one becomes acclimatized to and accustomed to the company of the knowers of Brahman. It's like if you were a young man and your family was getting into the car, and you all of a sudden you would feel like, where are they going? I want to go with them. And so you run out there and, don't leave me, don't leave me. So in that same way, then the truth seeker finds holy company to be most preferred and will want to be with them for lifetime to lifetime in whatever car or vehicle or body consciousness decides to assume being the best word in that case, rather than identify or attach. So assumed a body with the knowers of Brahman. And that's a well-known facet of spiritual life in India, and has been for time out of mind. So it's all done consciously. And in that way, then chit shuddhi, or purity of mind, is attained over lifetimes. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that pure mind is God, is Brahman. And Buddha said that too. Pure Buddha mind, that's Buddha mind and Buddha nature are one and the same thing. So that is an ultimate goal that you would take amongst these penultimate goals of practices that you're asking about, requisites that one undertakes, a life of a contemplative life, a life of scriptural study, a life of serving others. As Krishna says, giving wisdom to other beings is the best thing you can do. And so first you have to attain it yourself and make sure that you give it to them in the most purest and possible and best way. So the lover of divine reality, the knower of truth, the practitioner of the spiritual arts, and the meditator on formless reality and on God with form. They take up these 4 yogas and they make sure that first and foremost, those are kept with them. It's not a practice with them anymore. It's an observance of something that is. It's divine reality itself. So, as Holy Mother used to say, don't just seek God, see God. So these beings come into that position where they're seeing God in everything. Brahman is in everything, and it's not a thing or a place or can't be a thought even, but nonetheless there it is, supporting all things and names and thoughts as the underlying substratum. So that pure conscious awareness, subtle again, Anaranian, subtlest of the subtle, fades from view for most people. And that's where they get this feeling of ennui, as they say, unease. You get into a body, in a world, or in a particular state of existence, and you feel ill at ease, like there must be something more to life than this. That's probably the earlier signs of it. And then when you find your way to that memory of what it's like to be in holy company, you'll come across a guru and a group of people. And from there, it's like taking your next step in that series of lifetimes. Everything prior to that had been as if worthless. And then you reach that place, or that place that you can see the highest view and the deepest view of reality, though you still can't reach it. So at that time, then you enter into that sadhana period, or period of practices, and strengthen all of those yogas in you. In that way, then, a soul can reach the highest plane of existence from this very human position. Even on the Burloka could be one of the best places to do that. But that feeling of ill at ease comes first, like there's something missing here. And usually suffering, of course, is one way that drives a soul towards higher reality. But then even pleasure begins to become insipid and unsatisfying and kind of a weight. And at that time, a person awakens to the real God here on earth, called karma. And that if they awaken to that, then they can get free. Karma is a very good teacher and a way to freedom if it's used right. He says, you feel bound, and it's like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if you grab the male pigeon's beak, it'll struggle to get away. It doesn't like that. So in that way, the feeling of bondage causes a person to seek higher and deeper levels of realization. And then you'll find them every day waking up with that nitya sarga and various ways in which it wants to make its day a matter of amelioration. That is basically everything that's finite and limiting needs to be cast away or at least broadened, and everything that's of higher attainment, one needs to make progress towards it. By stages, the mind gains enlightenment, Sri Ramakrishna says, as we've just been studying over the past series of Sundays. So by stages, one goes forward. But it takes then some serious application. And that's where sadhana is rather one of the missing elements in householder life, we notice nowadays. The rust of householders is the lack of spiritual self-effort, Buddha said. So if you don't want that rust to accumulate over your mind-body mechanism and obscure the view of the perfect and pristine Atman or soul within you, then you polish the mirror of your mind every day, as Shankara says, and that'll give you the clearest view.
Thank you, Babaji.
Namaste, Babaji, everyone.
Yes.
Part of Imre's question and what your response and just the prologue, could you say a little more about the jivanmukti and videhamukti in relationship with when I read the gospel and I hear Sri Ramakrishna talk about God with form and God without form? Is videhamukti, can that be associated with God, with the formless God? And then because it seems like jivanmukti, there has to be some subtle form, no matter how subtle, in order, even if one has attained that formless reality, but there must still be some semblance of form there. So can those comparisons be made, or is the master talking about something else with reference to the jivanmukti and the videhamukti?
Well, in the Upanishad that we're going to be studying soon, and which I've been looking into deeper lately, they call jivanmukti, they put it in terms of two kinds of mind. The jivanmukti is a determinate mind, and the videhamukti is indeterminate mind. And of course, this all applies to a realized state in both cases. So the jivanmukti is going to keep that determination of entering into the body again, to be an example of a living, liberated soul in front of others, like Shankara did. So he would, as Sri Ramakrishna puts it in the gospel, as you're referring to there, it says, basically, he puts on the cloth of the ego, covers himself with the orange cloth, the monk, and then we'll take it and put it away when it's time to leave the body and be free of all trappings. So that the ego of the teacher, he called that in the gospel. Sri Ramakrishna said some people take on the ego of a teacher, and if they know it's taking on a position that the Divine Mother has given them, then there's of course no harm in that ego, and all good for us when they do that. The videhamukti is going to be a kind of to borrow an expression today, one and done. The boxer, the inferior boxer just jumps in and throws one punch and then gets out of the way and runs away. So one and done, But the videhamukta is sort of like that, just one lifetime and it's all over, as if to check in to see what's going on in the realms of relativity, and maybe be more like an inward oracle or a quiet, an open eye that is free of form. We know Vivekananda cherished that position because he said that I want to be a voice without a form. So it sort of gives us a clue that to become a videhamukti and to concentrating on formlessness leaves that doesn't take away, it adds everything. People think that giving up form, then you'd be missing out on everything that nature has to show and everything that happens in the realm of people and growth and even spiritual growth, as if you're just gone. I'm speaking the other day to one person, and their parents, come. There's a time when you have to let go of them because they die and so forth. And so it reminded me of Ramana Maharshi when they said that he was going to die because he had a cancer or something in his elbow or something. So they said, "Well, that's all over for you. You're going to go away. You're going to die." And his response was, "But where would I go? I don't understand. They're telling me I have to go, but where would I go?" So this is an example of a person whose consciousness is everywhere. I was trying to ride a Zen koan once, which is something you want to let happen rather than to attempt. But I was walking down a back road in the country at a retreat site, and I came upon this big field, and there was a barbed wire fence around it, and there was a sign on the fence that said "No trespassing." So, that's perfect for my koan. So I wrote down on a little pad there, I said, "Sign says no trespassing, but it's too late. I am everywhere already." So that turned into one of my koans. So, there's no trespassing for the realized soul, for the videhamukta. They're everywhere already, and they're not going to go anywhere. They realize Brahman doesn't move. It's motionless, static. But the thought that comes to people when they hear about formlessness is one of either fear or aversion, because they think maybe that's the taking away of everything. And they're used to and accustomed to action and getting some sort of fulfillment through action, attainment through action. It's very much impressed in the mind that that's the way to proceed. And the mind itself is all about action, and until it becomes chit, shuddhi, or pure mind, when it's free of that notion, then it's everywhere. It's very funny. Basically, the mind can instantly surround itself with the thought of limitation, and it can just as quickly remove it. And I think in both cases, videhamukti and jivanmukti are states of mind where determinate and indeterminate, where in one case, all the limitations have been cast away and the bird has flown from the cage. And in the other case of the living liberated soul, they become rather adept at finding different cages, you see, to fly into and fly out of. And so they take on bodies from lifetime to lifetime, and different kinds too, and they'll appear in different ways. I've often said that like a soul like Christ probably has already been here 3 or 4 times, and very few people have recognized him, or only certain people in certain circles have recognized that soul. Sometimes they come veiled, and sometimes they come in other ways. But it'd be like, I think Dalai Lama was heard to say recently, or that he might come back next time as a woman. So they're not limited to any gender or any specific race or religion. But of course, the hardest one for people to let go of is religion. Well, you just have to look back at the beginning. When Christ was born, there was no Christianity and there was no Buddhism when Buddha was on the earth. So these religions come after the fact, get added on, and sometimes parts of them are not very healthy add-ons. They're incrustations rather than actual examples of non-dual teachings. And that's where, when we go to India, we're very fortunate that we've had this whole cross-section, or several cross-sections of souls who have concentrated specifically on formlessness and its blessings, as if it, say, well, it can't be explained, God can't be explained, it can't be realized. But Sri Ramakrishna wasn't like that. He said, sure, you're right, Brahman can't be understood or realized by the impure mind, but the pure mind is God. So there's that moment again where you either imprison yourself in a philosophical thought that is half true, or maybe is true for a while, but needs to be cast away at some point, like a bird, sleeping on a sailing ship on the top of a mast. Then it's going to all of a sudden leave the ship and fly away looking for land. So at some point, there's got to be the soul's inward journey to the ultimate, return to the source, the origin of things. There must be something really funny I'm saying all the time, because our two Iceland brothers are just cracking up there.
Namaste, Babaji. Namaste, everyone. Yeah, we were talking about, I don't know, just a few things, but I actually have a question for you. I would like you to maybe, I was thinking about the idea of an avatar, and how with the avataric descent, which comes according to Krishna during every age as the unrighteousness increases and so on. I was thinking about how with the Buddha and how with Ramakrishna, they came with also certain responsibilities or objectives to fulfill here, as about the condition of human beings in the world and the collective human mind. It tends to be the case that the connection of the collective mind with formless reality, that this connection is sometimes corrodes or in a sense disappears for a while. So with the descent of the avataric person, or of that very special person, they come with the responsibility to reestablish this connection. And this connection is obviously so vital to the understanding of this deep spirituality, which we are trying to grasp here together. So if you could maybe talk about this idea and how this can also be seen, with Ramakrishna and maybe with Christ also, but also with people like Buddha, because he probably came at a time where the Vedas and where the old Hinduism had fallen into preoccupation with just rituals, and the formless reality, which was always the backbone of this spirituality, it had maybe been forgotten. So if you could maybe speak about this special concept, that'd be highly appreciated.
Yes, as I was just saying, the religions themselves weren't born until those great souls had appeared on earth, and then people started following them. At the time of Lord Buddha's coming, yes, a preoccupation with rituals was there, but at the same time, Holy Mother in a more current time has said that rituals are very important to people and you can't take them away. So it's really going to be different predilections and preferences of people, groups of people, souls, kinds of souls that come to earth. Some souls maybe, more used to or acclimatized to Islam or Judaism, wouldn't be into rituals. And I've often met with people like that and talked to them. And I hold a position that accepts both God with form and beyond form. I meditate on formless reality, but I've also learned puja and learned how to do it from Indian swamis. So I'm aware of both sides and know that there's blessings and beauty to all of it, and great help to the soul and to others in the participation in such rituals and so forth. So it could be that not only these religions are formed around greater ideologies like that, but also the individual people and the exemplars of those religions also accent a certain kind, like you're talking about avatars. So avatar of what? Of what age? Avatar of what country? What avatar of what following? Is it Vaishnava? Is it Shaivite? Is it Mother worship? So in that case, then you'll have people accenting that particular kind of yoga, we could call it, or expression of divine reality. And then people who like that will come running. So they'll line up, as it were, to get into that hall of where that particular yoga is being exemplified or taught, because that's exactly what they like, what they want. When it comes to such a broad division as form and formlessness, that's where I've often said that there are some dualities. Of course, we know deluding dualities like pleasure and pain, one of the most difficult and limiting, but there are dualities of a very high nature. Maybe another tier would be bondage and liberation. When you really look at it and you look at yourself, it's hard to believe it, that you're in bondage. I mean, nobody wants to be in bondage. So when you look deeply at the nature of your soul, then you can't say I'm bound. Almost everyone's going to say in the final evaluation, I'm free. I'm ever free. I'm ever free, never bound. So it's a good thing to take up a duality of that deep nature and contemplate it, do thinking on it, and ask yourself, in what way am I bound? Or why do I feel bound? Or what is bondage? This is Atma Vichara in action, and it can happen on many different planes and levels. And with the great mind there behind you, because the great mind itself is in a kind of bondage, but it's also a place of exit to freedom. You have to go through the mind to get free, and you have to use the mind to get into a state of bondage, both directions. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, talk about heaven and hell in that way. So there is all that, and there is also the concept or reality, if you will, or if you can, of absolute freedom, how the soul never was bound in the first place. And there was whoever came up with the idea that the soul is bound was not doing humanity a very good service by telling them that. You're not mortal, you're immortal. You're not finite, you're infinite, Swami Shishananda would say, as I said earlier. And he said, then he'd follow that up and end it right there in America in front of his congregation who had been raised amongst Christianity. He'd follow it up by saying, you're not a sinner, you're divine. He would end that. He would end that all the time. You're infinite, not finite. You're immortal, not mortal. You're not a sinner, you're divine. So he would be trying to reverse that trend of poor thinking or weak thinking or antagonistic thinking, even though it might have been, for a good intention that people were working on getting rid of sins and all that. They have to label your pure nature sinful in order to get free of sin is a rather awkward position to be in. So then you should also take up this idea of moksha or mukti. It's a freedom that's ever at hand. It never knew bondage. And that's where you get these Advaitic thoughts and ways of thinking that free you immediately. Like I said, each day you should free yourself from the cage immediately. And your meditation should be that. And when you come back to the body, you should come back to it as a temple, like as has been said, that you're getting into it to make it fit and keep it fit for having more God-realized experiences, as Sri Ramakrishna said, number one, and then letting others see how you can live a divine life in the body. When Lexiksen, our founder, before he passed away, he said, "No, don't," because everyone was interested in his passing. The Sufis were interested in it because he had been a sheikh. The Tibetans, because Domo Geshe is living on his land in New York, upstate, and he went up there and meditated with him all the time. So he had Tibetan Buddhists there in his bedroom as soon as he passed away. And other people were interested in how he was going to dispose of his body. So before he left, he knew that they were all thinking this. So he said, "No, don't cremate it. This body has become a crystal because it's had so many spiritual experiences. So there's a graveyard in a certain state where I think one of his relatives might have been buried. Maybe his father was still alive. So he said, bury me there, just regular style, like a Christian would do. And then people can come to that site and they will get the emanation off this body that had become a crystal. So, that was all very interesting to know of his thinking in that way. We would have thought that he probably would have decided to cremate his body. But that's the direction he went. And I would say he probably knew it didn't matter one way or the other what happens to the body after it's gone. People are far too invested in their body while they're living. Why should they take it with them when they have a chance to be videha? You see, they can get free of bodies and be more like their true self is, all pervasive and ever free. So these are good things to contemplate and think about and read about in the philosophies and talk about in satsang. It keeps our mind agile, and the hot air balloon of the mind keeps it buoyant. You've seen these big hot air balloon festivals. You've seen pictures of them, all these colored balloons that people create. Make such a big thing out. Their whole life is around a hot air balloon. There are people that just travel around with them and attend these festivals. And so if you're standing there and people are taking off, they've got their own, and their trailer behind them, they've got their own compressed air, they'll plug it up to the balloon, blow it up themselves. They don't have to pay anyone to do it. Put the carriage on the bottom of it and just go flying and then come back to their van and drive away. But if you were looking at all of these balloons going up all around you, you might say, well, that's like all the avatars that have come from age to age. Krishna said, there's as many avatars, Arjuna, or Uddhava he's talking to, there's as many avatars, Uddhavas, as there are fruits on that bush over there, that tree. So you'd be watching each of these beautiful, wonderfully matured and refined air balloons go up in the air, and each one of those could be an avatar that has come and exemplified the truth of reality for people. It's very strange how, at least in this plane of existence, that people don't take the clue. That's where that word clueless comes up. Or like they use the word dumbfounded. Dumb went and found them, and then they couldn't recognize anything after that. So these are exemplars of the jivanmuktas, but videhamuktas can also be great exemplars one and done is also a good thing to show how to, like Uddalaka, we were showing his chart a couple Sundays ago, and your Lord Vashishta is teaching about this great soul who had tried to get into formless reality many times and failed. It wasn't like he was hurting, because he was a very highly attained yogi and he didn't have any problems, but he couldn't make that final push to formlessness. And so he gathered all his energies together yogically and step by step went towards the goal and attained it in that lifetime. Later on, you read about him in some of the, in an Upanishad and so forth, at a realized state after he had attained that. So the videhamuktis are just, they don't come back and crow about it, you know. It's like you'd have to be there and understand a little bit about their state of mind and how they vanished into formlessness in order to understand what that's like or how great that is. So it's not so matter of as a comparison as it is a side-by-side example of modes that the soul has available to it. And short of either muktis, you know, there's krama mukti, there's a gradual step-by-step progression towards higher reality. And so that's why Krishna is explaining that in the Gita in some 4 or 5 echelons of how a soul is born again in families and comes, as I was saying, comes to be a lover of Brahman and prefers only the company of Brahman. I mean, it's amazing that the Ramakrishna order has come so recently because of an avatar's descent. It's an avatar is like a magnet. If you put it down in a world of iron filings, you know, then those that have a charge are those that are nearest to the magnet. They'll come flocking. So all of a sudden you've got these hundreds and thousands of souls that take monastic vows just out of nowhere. What happened? Where were those souls before that? And then you have householders doing the same. These dharmic householders say, "Oh, there he is! Finally, I've been waiting many lifetimes for him. Now I'm going to go to him." And all of a sudden, they're right there, attached to that magnet, and it's a rare occurrence that we've just seen in 1800s with Sri Ramakrishna. And what happened just after that? We're still reeling from the effect of his being here. People are saying stupid things like, "Oh, well, he didn't transform the world into heaven." You know, that was the same problem that Judas didn't understand with Jesus. Basically, earth is never going to be heaven, or it is heaven already if you make it that. Take your pick of those 2 options. But basically, the thing is that, yeah, these great souls will come and show heaven on earth, or show a way towards transcendentalism that the soul who has been waiting for that can just renounce everything, put on a robe, and walk through the gates. It's just that simple. You get your wings in Christianity, right? So you just drop everything and you pick up one essential thing and you put that around yourself and you walk through the gates. It's that you've been waiting a long time, and many thousands of souls have been waiting for that. And there's a proof of it right there. They did it, and they're out of here, one and done. They might as well be one and done, and they're free. Some of them, among them, you know, may want to be jivanmuktis or bodhisattvas, and come back. Whether to maybe perfect themselves a little bit, because in Buddhism, you can be a Buddha and attain bodhisattva. And is that it? You'd say to the Buddha, you say, "Oh no, there's 10 pure lands, my son. Inside, deeper, there are 9 more pure lands that you're going to have to attain. They're called the 10 lands of Buddhism. There's a school for that. And so here's what you attain at each level until all the Buddhas will proclaim you as a Buddha. And so the jivanmukti has destroyed ignorance. That's what has to happen for us. We have to destroy ignorance. We have to be certain about the truth. That's all. It doesn't matter whether we're a monk, householder, or white, or black, or Indian, or American, or Western, or Eastern. None of that matters. It's all, those are just like circumstances we're born into. The circumstances that we dictated before we got here. And the real thing is freedom is the ultimate goal. It's such a true nature. And we're here to proclaim that and express it. Express it and proclaim it both. You don't hide your light under a bushel, right? So you bring it out. And this is what I found out from my trek through earth plane in this lifetime. I found something. Oh, hear ye sons of immortal bliss. The Upanishad said. Vivekananda used to love to recite that sloka. I have found the ultimate one. I have found the immortal soul. Oh, hear ye children of immortal bliss. He wants you to know that you too are not mortal and that you have just taken on mortality as an assumption. And so that you could reach this highest plane, tell everyone there, exemplify it. Even if you're a silent sage, you're exemplifying it. When they say sometimes the glass is half full, right? That's maybe a God blog I'll do next week. Well, next week I'll be gone, but the glass is half full, then it gurgles still when you pour water in it. But if it's full, it doesn't gurgle anymore. So some souls just reach the end of words and thoughts and teachings and just go into this deep silence. But they still exude everything that they went through on their way to that high plateau. And like swans seeking the highest mountain refuge, they'll leave a pristine lake and go looking for a more pristine lake at higher elevation. So they have this hot air balloon tendency. It's this deep aspiration in them. It's like wanting to breathe free. So all of that then by way of saying, may peace come unto all, may divine wisdom dawn upon all, may all see the face of truth and be fortified by the armor of love. Om peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us, peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.